This is the third video I've shared about our fears, and I hope that you'll check out the first two. Now, we have an enemy who knows that fear can be used against us and very successfully, but we all have a God who knows this also, and he gives us the weapons to fight Satan, and that he is greater than the enemy's power. We must remember that. God speaks to each and every fear we might have. Now, I shared some of the things that I fear, and one of those, or it used to be one of those, was that we would lose all our money. Now, I don't know where this came from, but it just hung with me for a long time. Some of the reasons why may be that my mom and I lived in poverty level for a period of time. Also, when our boys were little, we were quite poor. But it's just one of those irrational fears that Satan was using against me. I want to testify how God took care of my mom, though. That is just an amazing story. She lived on a tiny Social Security check. But in the small town where she lived, there were great apartments, and they were based on income that she lived in for several years. But as she declined emotionally and physically, I had no idea how I was going to take care of her. I was it as far as taking care of her. My brother had died years before, and so I was really concerned about it. She would not come live with us. And so I knew something was going to have to happen because it was becoming more obvious that she could not live alone. In the town where she lived is a great assisted living place. And I always thought that would be great for her to live there, but I also knew it was kind of expensive and had no idea how we could even swing that. Well, they accepted her Social Security check, and then she received some assistance to make up for the rest of it. I would have never dreamed that she would be able to live there. And I just think that the scripture that we talked about in Isaiah that I read, as far as God cares for us, even into our old age, was so appropriate there. But as for us, even personally, we have story after story of how God has taken care of us. I call them our poor stories. And I often have thought, why are you worrying about this? Thankfully, God has worked in my life in that a lot, and I don't much anymore. But also, there are God's promises of his care for us. And Jesus speaks to this directly. You can find it in Matthew 6 and in Luke 12. And these are fantastic passages if you're concerned about money. And I encourage you to read them. He tells us, look, everybody else goes after all this stuff. What you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, all that. Everybody goes after that. Don't be like them. And Jesus really gets radical about our obedience in this. He even says in Luke 12, he talks about selling all you have and giving it to those in need. But I see three things specifically in these passages. And again, I would encourage you to read them. Go home or to read them. But three things. Our responsibility in all of this. First is trust him. Secondly is our generosity. And third is seeking God's kingdom. I mean, even in Malachi, God tells us, try giving it all away and see if I won't bless you and pour out the blessings from heaven. I think these three things, and we have found them in our lives, to be the antidote against our financial woes or worries. And one more thing, and I tell everyone this. This economy that we live in, which I know it's been scary times, but this economy is not God's economy at all. He can still bless, and he does still bless, and he takes care of us and provides for us. That's one fear, but what about our others? Well, I'll wrap up some more things in the final video next.